I'm Dave Wiesdock, Sage of Creative Scaffolding.
And I'm Jen West, Professional Rebel of Delight.
And this is Shadow Casting. All right. Welcome to another awesome episode of Shadow Casting. Today we're going to talk about or continue talking about play mindset. Now, for our audience, if you're listening to this podcast, this is the second one of our series. So we'll share in the show notes, like we always do, a link to the first episode. So that way you can get yourself caught up before you dive into this podcast. For those that are returning, welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed our challenge the other week of trying to find the difference between that survival and fulfillment cycle. And I think before we jump in today and really get going, even for our audience that did hear the podcast that was already a couple weeks ago, might not hurt to do a little bit of a refresher. And Jen, since this is kind of your baby and your bellywick, I'd love for you to give us the laydown again of where we are, what territory we're in, and where we're headed today.
Sure. So let's jump back in. Last week, we did an introduction of what play mindset is. And when we started, I said that play was its own acronym, and it stands for a practice that lights the way to actions that support you. Because I noticed working with people, they were either in a survival cycle or a fulfillment cycle. And when we're in a survival cycle, we tend to be on autopilot. Everything's happening to us. People are happening to us. Circumstances are happening to us. And we're going through the world as it presents itself. When we move into a fulfillment cycle, we are acting on the world. So whatever's there, we have power in it. So we take the actions, we make the decisions, we're present to what's happening. So there are the two sides, the survival cycle and the fulfillment cycle. And we walk through those to talk about how it feels. So we go from autopilot, then we feel fear. We start to blame our circumstances or our life on others. We feel like a victim. We close off. We dwell on what's happening. We drift through life. And we feel a lot of anxiety from this, which keeps us in autopilot and fear. So that's one cycle. The other cycle is the fulfillment cycle. And this one, we're present, we're alert, we see what's happening in our world. It gives us compassion because we've done some work on ourselves. We see our mistakes. We see other people are doing their best. And through that, we start to find a sense of balance in ourselves. We're human. And in that, we start to take responsibility for ourselves and we feel powerful in our world and possibilities start to show up. And we trust that these things will come to us and we can make decisions and it gets exciting. And then we're back in presence and it continues around. The whole tool is to get from survival cycle into the fulfillment cycle. And another piece we talked about was finite and infinite games. And this is where it gets really fun because most of the time we're living a life that we think is a finite game, whether we're going to work and a job or dealing with our kids. It's all structured and there are boundaries and rules and there are only a certain number of players and you have to do it just right. But that's not how the world works. We actually live more in an infinite game where the boundaries stretch and different players come and go and the rules are flexible. And so we can shift and play. And so that's what we talked about last week. I highly recommend going back in because we go deep dive into it. Today, we are starting with, from the survival cycle, anxiety, and moving that to the fulfillment cycle of excitement. And we do that through leaning into the unknown and discomfort.
Oh boy. So I didn't even think about talking about this, but I think it'd be fun to mention for our audience, we kind of just went through this cycle today. And I think as a great example of it, we were on the fulfillment side, but we had to move through it. And one of the things that I'm learning as a co-host on a podcast is how to be a better co-host on a podcast. And sometimes one of the best ways to do that is by going back and listening to your own work. And that's not comfortable at all, at least not for me, not very comfortable. And so I know when I was listening, there were parts where I was already subconsciously trying to shut it down, come up with an excuse, not wanting to face that discomfort. But then I picked a different path and I decided, okay, I could just lean into it, have some fun with it, and see what comes up. And really, it was such a gift to myself to be able to go through this and lean into it because at the end, I was able to learn and grow and make immediate changes to how I want to communicate and how I want to present myself as a podcast host. And the only way that I could do that was by moving through and facing that unknown and that fear. So I think that that's really cool. And we kind of debriefed about that before this podcast, which is why I thought that'd be a cool kind of like segue or example for me to bring up with this.
Yeah, listening to the podcasts and listening to how we come across and how we're working, it's uncomfortable. Almost everybody hates their voice. So listening to ourselves talk is always difficult. And
Well,
it's the only way to get better.
it is. And when I was playing with this tool and figuring out my own perspective for it, because again, this is Jen's tool and then something that she's shared with me both directly and even used with me indirectly before I even knew what it was fully. When I think of the anxiety and excitement, there was something that kind of jumped out at me about that because when I went to Cairo school, we had learned that physiologically, those are the same internal responses. And that got me thinking how interesting this is that this is that first split in the cycles between anxiety and excitement. And physiologically, when we are in those modes, the same thing sort of happens. An event is triggered, and our adrenal glands, which sit on top of our kidneys, we release adrenaline. And we go into what a lot of people are familiar with, which is the fight or flight response. However, what is so interesting to me about this is that if you take away the trigger of the event, the same thing is happening in the body. So whether you're getting chased by a bear or whether you're stressing about a presentation for work, physiologically, you are experiencing the same symptoms, the same increased heart rate, the same faster breathing, the same kind of heightened senses, the same increased energy levels. Blood flow is shifting to your muscles. And what happens is our brains start to associate those feelings based on the trigger. That is where I feel the way through from survival to fulfillment. And it comes by first recognizing for me that physiologically, I'm going to kind of experience the same symptoms.
Yeah, exactly. It's the craziest thing. And I recommend all of our audience try it. When you're feeling excitement, what do you feel in your body? For most people, it's butterflies in the stomach. Your hands get all sweaty. Your heart is racing. You're flush with energy. What happens when you're in anxiety? Got butterflies in the stomach. Your palms are sweaty. Your breathing changes. Your heart rate goes up. You get flush in the face. It's the same physiological thing, just like Dave was saying. And the difference is context or what you're thinking about or where your mind is actually going. Because really, anxiety is looking to the future and thinking of everything that's going to go wrong. And excitement is looking to the future and thinking about how cool it's going to be. That's it. Just, is it going to be awful? Is it going to be great? And to be in a fulfillment cycle, you don't have to be in excitement necessarily. You just have to be out of the fear and everything that's going to go wrong. You can neutralize that. And that's why the tool is leaning into discomfort, because it's just getting into your body and knowing the discomfort's just uncomfortable and it's okay. And you don't have to put, this is going to be great or this is going to be awful. Just be like, it's just not known. And that sucks.
I think when you really first introduced this tool to me, it was very tiny baby steps. It was, I was in anxiety or fear or depression, and I told you about it a week after the fact, after I noticed it. And then you would go, okay, try to see if you can notice when it comes up. It was just a simple exercise. Then I started to notice, oh, I woke up today and I felt a little off or whatever. I felt anxious. Then we started putting words to that feeling. Okay, well, it's not just anxiety. What are you feeling? Fast heart rate, increased blood pressure, palms being sweaty. I give you a list of things. And then when we started to talk about it from there, instead of calling it and labeling it as anxiety, we talked about it as the symptoms themselves. And this was uncomfortable for me, but by leaning into it, it became manageable. Because if I were to say to somebody, don't be anxious, their anxiety is just going to double down and get more anxious. But if somebody says, hey, I feel like I'm breathing really fast, okay, well, let's take some calming breaths. Let's go for a nice stroll outside. Do you need a glass of water? Like, there's a shift in the mentality and the focus. And I think for me, that's what comes up when you're talking here, because if you are experiencing those same symptoms and it does kind of come down to mindset, then I think mindset is where really that change needs to occur. It's not the physiological changes. It's not judging the response. It's not labeling it as anxiety or excitement. It's getting into the body, experiencing it, and then eventually, over time, after you practice that, after you've learned the sensations, learning to not judge the association with those sensations, and then learning to just be with the sensations. And then, like, step 5 is when you go, okay, now that I'm experiencing this and I no longer want to associate that, or I no longer do associate that with something like fear and anxiety, then that's when you start to step into this next threshold with this tool.
Yeah, we're not starting with awareness on our circle, but really every single step has a little bit of awareness in it. You have to recognize discomfort first. And even before you recognize discomfort, you have to start noticing when you're in excitement and when you're in anxiety, and what does it feel like? And what does it feel like at the very beginning when it's just a spark before it's full blown and your brain is in it and everything's happening and panic attacks are just ensuing, or like me when I'm excited, bouncing off the walls and just like, yeah, make it happen. You got to catch it early. I feel it rising. And here's the funny thing with both excitement and anxiety, they're habits. The things that we're scared of, we've created and we've gotten used to it being a scary thing and an anxiety inducing thing. And the things that we enjoy and find exciting and we don't care if we know what's going on, we're looking forward to the surprise of it. Habit. Getting to know both of those and when they arise and what thoughts come up with them gets us to the habit portion. And here's the crazy thing. So the habit is a word that it's a hard one because it has so many different definitions. Ego. So when I'm talking about the ego, I'm not talking about Freud's version of the ego, superego. This is, I think, other people
This
or
is a
more.
playful version.
Yeah, it's a playful version. I think maybe some mystics use ego more this way. I got it from somewhere else. I can't say exactly where. It built and molded over time. And so our ego is like our protective mechanism. It wants us to be safe and secure. And the ego does that by keeping things the same. And the funny thing is, the ego is not very bright. So if you live in a bad situation that isn't that great, the ego's like, at least we know what's going to happen. So let's stay with that. And that's why people get stuck and they live in anxiety because they know what's going to happen in the future because they just relive that pattern. So their anxiety isn't about this far off monster. They've had it happen before. They know that bad thing can happen. They've lived that bad thing. And the ego is this part of us that says, we are safe if we stay the same. And so when I talk about discomfort, it's not the discomfort of those things that we have to do and we don't know, but we do. It's like the same pattern happening. The discomfort I'm talking about is that discomfort that takes you to something you've never been or done. You almost have to change your identity. And that's the discomfort. And it can be more anxiety ridden because it's the unknown. Let's say you're in an unhealthy relationship and you stick with it too long. You know you should get out of that relationship, that it's not working, it's not going to stay, but you're used to the pattern. And a holiday's coming up. So you got to stay through that holiday before you leave the relationship. And what will happen if I leave that relationship? Then I'm by myself. Who am I going to go hiking with? Even though I don't like that person. And we don't have fun on our hikes. We fight or whatever. If you leave the relationship, now it's unknown. Who are you now? And that's the scary part. And the ego just says, no, let's stay. We know this person. They're not that bad. When they're nice, they're great. Yeah, they suck sometimes, but when they're nice, we have so much fun. And that's what we're dealing with.
So I feel like I'm asking a question here along the lines of we were talking about habit and how anxiety and fear can be habitual actions and responses. And then we were talking about the ego and how the ego uses habit because it wants that certainty and it wants that comfort. So how does that all tie together now? Like how do we connect those dots? Because from the outside looking in, they look a little, I see what the picture you're building, and like why does the ego want comfort over discomfort? Like what is it trying to protect? And is there a way that we can respond, or is there a way that we can respond to our ego that creates or helps us move through this part of the discomfort and this tool?
The ego uses fear. It's the one that pretty much created the habit. It's the one that makes us fearful of things that maybe aren't worthy of fear because the ego needs that. It's in control, and control is a big, important piece for the ego. When we go and do something else, it's no longer in control. It has to take a back seat. I don't know if this answers your question, Dave, but I think of Elizabeth Gilbert in her book, Big Magic. And she talks about fear and creativity being in the same car with her when she's driving. And they're going on a road trip. Fear gets to come, but fear does not get to drive. It doesn't get a say in what's happening. It doesn't get any activity in it. It doesn't even get a mess with the radio. But she knows that fear is going to come along. And that's the relationship we have to build with the ego, where the ego says, let's stay in the pattern. And we have to say, no, we're going to step out of that. We're going to go do something new. We're going to break this because it's not good for us. We've been in the same cycle forever. And ego tries to keep us on that autopilot thing, doesn't want us really thinking about what we want or who we want to be, where we want to go. It just continues on and it tells us scary stories. So we keep going.
That was kind of the question I guess I was really trying to ask is like, what, like, why does ego want the comfort? But it wants the comfort because its wiring is to control. And the only way it can control is by continuing to keep us in what is comfortable, safe, and known. Is that
Exactly.
okay?
Yeah, ego likes control. It makes it very happy. And so it'll use any, and it can't tell you directly, be scared of this thing because we're too smart for that. So it uses covert operation to scare us into staying the same.
Right, right. So I really liked how you phrased that of the way we move through the discomfort and using the quality in this tool is by building a relationship with our ego and by extension, fear. And who is the other driver? Excitement, I think, joy,
For Elizabeth Gilbert, it was creativity.
creativity.
Yeah, the muse.
Okay. So I guess it doesn't have to be creativity, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
could be like the muse and the ego. And so the muse wants to be creative and bring new things into the world, and the ego is fear based and wants to stay stuck in the same.
and it's also not something that's kind of like a one and done either. This is something that is a constant, almost like a walking meditation. It's something that you have to be aware of. And the only way you can really be aware of it is by going out and experiencing life and noticing and practicing to notice these things when they come up for you. The way that the flow of that meditation works in my scaffolding brain, or the way that I kind of scaffold this together, is that they have like, we have a triggering event, whatever that is. Again, the bear chasing us or the
New job. Let's say
new,
you got a new job. That's a scary thing, and it could be exciting, but you don't know how it's going to go, how your coworkers are going to be, if you're going to totally screw up at the beginning. Exciting anxiety, and it's really leaning into the discomfort so you can choose to go towards excitement, to possibility, to newness, to building more of yourself. And it's still uncomfortable and scary, and those sensations are fine. It's just where we let our heads go with it. Do we go to, we won't be good enough, or do we go to, who will I become?
and with the clients that we've worked with in the past, we have a diagram that we call the growth circles. And I don't know where it originated from. I don't, we didn't create it.
I think somebody found it on Facebook probably, but I'll put it on our Instagram.
Great. And the reason I've always loved this diagram has been like near and dear to my heart for a few years now. And then when we were talking about this tool, it just broke something open in me that just added a whole other context to this. It was a new scaffolding leaning into my creativity. It was a new scaffolding for this growth chart. Because if you're listening to the podcast, maybe you can pull it up if you're not driving, or look at it later. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4 circles, and there's a line going through the 4 circles. And as you go from one circle to the next, they sort of get bigger and sort of envelop the other circles, kind of like a Russian doll sort of look. And each circle represents a different zone. You start with the smallest circle, which is your comfort zone. And then as you start to branch that circle open a little more, you're in your fear zone. And then you branch out a little more, the circle gets a little bigger, and that line continues to move outwards, and you go to the learning zone. And then finally, this big, wide green circle is your growth zone. And the way that the line draws is that you have to move through each of these zones to get to the next zone. And I've always liked that.
Yeah, you can't skip straight from comfort to growth. You just can't. You got to go through the uncomfortable beginner mind and fear and not being good at stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so now it makes the comfort and the fear zone make a lot more sense. Those are your ego zones. It's when the ego is kind of driving the train or the car, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the learning and the growth zone is when creativity takes over. And to move from one to the next, you have to move through. You have to go through it. And I think that that's the takeaway that I want to really emphasize with this lesson or with this tool for me is that the practicality of this comes from the ability to move through the discomfort, not around it, not ignore it, not stuff it down, but to just honor it, be with what it is rather than trying to label or judge it. And when you do that, it allows the fear or the excitement to just be what it is. And that opens you up to these other bigger zones like learning and growth.
Yeah. I really like that too, because I've always liked this diagram, just like you, Dave, but I hadn't put it into the context of the ego. And it's so clear looking at it now that ego's very happy in its comfort zone and it chugs along and you're living the same life and you're in your pattern and you're unconscious and you're just going and going. And then you go into that fear zone because you want to try something new or you move a little bit out of comfort. And that's when ego grabs hold and says, that's really scary. Really horrible things are going to happen to you. And you suck back into comfort, go back unconscious. And so getting from that into learning is hard. And even once you get into learning at first, if you're not good at being a beginner, you're going to suck right back into the comfort zone of who you've always been. So getting all the way to growth, where you've been the beginner and you stay long enough to change yourself, it's big and it's hard. And the ego definitely will fight you for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me now, I'm starting to put these pieces all together. And for our audience, again, this is a tool that Jen's had for a while that she even worked with me on a little bit with this. And then I've been more recently exposed to it. So it was really fun podcasting on a tool that I'm both experienced in because I've had to go through it myself. And now it's something that now that I see what it looks like big picture, how these pieces all fit together. So at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about our physiological response. So we have this triggering event, whatever it is, that brings up fear, excitement, nervousness, this involuntary reaction within our own body where our blood pressure spikes, our blood rushes to our hands and our feet and our muscles because we're getting ready to fight or flight. Whatever causes that response, stress can cause that response a lot. And you're given a choice from that flow. You can either listen to your ego, fear, anxiety, and go back into your comfort zone, shrink back down. Or if it's excitement and it's like Jen was saying with the new job and you're like this nervousness with it, the ego can still get you back into your comfort zone because maybe when you start your new job, you don't make you don't try to stand out. You just sort of keep your head down, blinders on, just you're there to do your job, get in, get out. And you're not really living from your values and your personality. That's where the ego can get you with that kind of comfort zone. So that's option one. The other option is that you lean into your values, your purpose, your personality, and you try to be present in the moment. You actually scratch that. You be present in the moment. You are present with what you are feeling physiologically inside. And it may or may not be the list that I just gave you. This doesn't have to just be with this. But as you are with those feelings and you align them or weigh them against your values and your purpose, this begins to open you up into those bigger growth zones and learning zones. And so what happens is that when I first looked at this and why I mentioned that I'm still learning this myself is I did see this as a little bit of either or. You're kind of in survival or you're in fulfillment. You're either in anxiety or you're in excitement, or that there's these kind of polar opposites that kind of ping pong back and forth within you as you go through life. And when you go through life, like Jen was talking about last couple weeks ago, and you feel like life is happening to you, it's easy to look at this cycle and think as if life is happening to you. But when you look at this cycle from the sense of choice and possibility, well, then the options aren't either or, then they become both and. So then you start to realize, okay, regardless of what I'm feeling and experiencing, I need to be in that and feel that because that's just as important as any other feeling that I feel and experience. And when we let the fear win and go back to our comfort zone, then we can't grow and learn. So the either or would be whether we let the fear win and go back to the comfort zone, or whether we choose to be brave and dip our toes into the unknown. But really, it's a both and. It's that we experience what we need to feel in this comfort zone, in this fear zone. And by being present with it, it opens us up into the learning and the growth zone. It's not that you go, okay, I'm just going to learn and grow, right? And ignore what you're feeling. You have to go through those feelings. And again, that's just like the real point that I want to reiterate that I learned with this tool.
Yeah, you have to get into your body. You have to see it coming. If you don't feel that stuff starting to rise, if you don't recognize discomfort until ego has already won and pulled you back, you're not going to change. There's this slow step. And I think it's why I start with this tool first, because there are a lot of tools. There are 8 different tools to help you get to more fulfillment. Fulfillment is really just living life. It's moving through life. It's being bold and being there, not being stuck in the same cycle, doing the same things day to day, not knowing, worrying about money and worrying about life. Yeah, you have to have those in the back of your mind, but you got to change. You got to keep growing. You got to let the world mold you a little bit and change you. And so, yeah, discomfort, you want to lean into it instead of pull back from it. And I think that'll be our challenge today, if that works for you, Dave. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay. So the challenge today is to feel, start feeling, and not your emotions. I don't care. We've talked about it. Anxiety, excitement, they're the same. They're just different words. So don't use the emotion. Feel in your body. What do you feel? What does it feel like when it starts to come up? What thoughts do you start thinking? And do it in different contexts. Maybe you're a total social butterfly. So if you go to a concert or you go out with friends, that gives you excitement. Feel that in your body. Is there any discomfort with with friends? If you're more of an introvert, that building up of going out with friends is discomfort. Do I really want to go? Are you one of those people like me when it's like, I don't really want to go? Why did I say I'd go? And then I push myself to go, and then I have a great time. And I remind myself after, this is good. I got to keep remembering that it's good to go out with friends and see them because I had fun. And then the cycle comes right back around where it's like, do I really want to go?
See, I'm the exact opposite. I'm the friend that roped you into it, and I'm picking you up, going, come on, Jen, let's go.
Let's go. We're going to have so much fun. We're going to the disco. See, that's why we work well together. My extrovert for my introvert.
It is.
Yep.
I'm the one that
Exactly.
sent you 3 reminders, offered to give you a ride, double checked your plans with.
Yeah. Don't miss out. You want to come. But he's feeling the excitement for it. We both have the same sweaty palms. I'm deciding it's discomfort for me. Now, the opposite happens. Dave will be in some situation and he's feeling the discomfort and has to rise to the occasion. Is he going to go to anxiety or join in excitement? And I'm all in. It's probably doing shadow work. I'm like, yeah, it sucks. Isn't it great? You just felt triggered. Yeah. Felt triggered and I want to go to bed. And I think I feel a migraine coming on. Right? Yeah.
No.
I'm a masochist. So I have told my husband, I'm like, trigger me. Because when I feel that reaction in my body, I get excited. There's something to change, something to deconstruct. It's like a puzzle for me. I'm a weirdo.
No, I mean, I was the same way. I mean, I don't, it's it's hard listening to a podcast that you've recorded and to be critical of it when you want it to be so successful and do so well. And but again, it's in both of those situations, both from the excitement and the fear, there's choice there and there's opportunities for learning and growth. I mean, but even as the ENTJ, when when I have introverted friends, I had to learn that after I offered the second or third time for X, Y, or Z, and they said no, that A, it wasn't personal. That was a really big lesson to learn. But B, to just learn and grow with where people are at, that they aren't at that same energy and same level that I'm always at, to be more empathetic to where people are. And yes, that's how I'm tying this together with our tagline of celebrating humanity. Like that's how we
Yeah.
do it. When we learn how to go through our own fear and our own ego traps, our own habits, we become more empathetic and understanding of the ego traps and the fear that others experience. And even more poignant is that when we can have a shared experience of those, then oftentimes that gives us a framework to work off of together. But the only way we get there is by going through our own discomfort. And so it's a tall order, it's a big ask, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it's a continual process. And we kind of talked about this a bit in a previous quote we did about getting to the top of the mountain. It's what you bring up with you. And this is a great example. You're going to have that physiological response around the side of the mountains because everything's happening there. But when you get in touch with yourself, what are you bringing with you? Excitement or fear?
Yeah. Or maybe even a little bit of both. I think fear is on both. Fear
Oh,
lives in excitement and it just does. It just tingly. What's going to happen next? It's whether we're just looking at every horrible possibility or we're looking at how it could be fun.
yeah.
So lean in, see what your head says. Like when those feelings come up, what's your head saying? Is it going to be a disaster or is it something that you could turn into growth and an event and something good, something character building that makes you who you want to be?
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening today. As always, make sure to drop us a like wherever you're listening from. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening from. Be sure to drop us a comment. Let us know how you did on the challenge this week. And as always,
Yeah. Get ready for next week because presence is coming. And until then,
I'll be present.
see ya.